contest page. Enter for your chance to win a pair of passes to an early screening of Gladiator 2. It's in theaters on November 22nd. KFAN.com, keyword contest for your chance to win.
Oh, baby, you're young.
You know that, did you ever see Gladiator 1?
With Russell Crowe, right?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
A fine film, but in all fairness to Gladiator 1 and Russell Crowe, you know that movie was done much better decades before, correct?
I don't know that I knew that, but I'll take your word for it. Who was in it?
An actor by the name, Michael Douglas's father, Kirk.
Oh, yeah, he was good.
Motion picture called Spartacus. I highly recommend that the kids amongst you rent it. Long film. You got to be in for a while. I want to say it's a 3-hour special. Not here to hammer 1 or 2 of Gladiator. Gladiator 1 was outstanding. I'll assume Gladiator 2 is good. But you don't beat the genuine article. Spartacus. Try it sometime.
I'll take a look at it.
Film. Great soundtrack, too.
Was it? Gladiator was pretty good. I remember where I saw Gladiator.
You do?
I do. Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
What were you doing there? Is that one of your colleges?
No. No, good guess.
Oh.
Could have been. It was a tennis tournament.
Oh.
I was 17 or 18.
17 or 18.
Needed to kill some time.
Did you win it, as you recall?
That one, no.
So many.
I don't think I ever won that one.
Do I owe a certain former sports, now sort of political analyst observer an apology? Now, 2 days after the election. Do you remember what we reviewed about a story written by Dave Zirin about, I don't know, I'd say 3-4 weeks ago?
Too much football. Leaning into the football too much.
Here's the headline.
Yep.
The dark side of the Democratic Party's embrace of football. That was the premise. And basically he wrote, look, Democrats are claiming football for themselves, presenting the sport as not only patriotic, but as a potent symbol of the kind of teamwork needed to take down Donald Trump. The presence on the ticket of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a former defensive coordinator, as we were repeatedly reminded at the DNC, of the state champions at Mankato, he wrote East, wasn't it West? Whatever, high school, has flipped the pigskin script. Thousands of signs that read coach and chants of the same flooded the DMC when he took to the microphone. Trump and his weaselly running mate, J.D. Vance, have been recast as football know-nothings, forced to lob awkward insults like Walz wasn't even a coach. He was an assistant coach. It comes off as more than just flat and churlish. It shows that Trump and Vance have never really played the game and are therefore, quote-unquote, soft themselves. The platforming of football as a patriotic totem cannot be separated from the sport's embrace of hypermasculinity and violence. Huffington Post went with the headline, How Kamala Harris Made Patriotism Fun for Liberals. Football and the Coach Walz persona is now part of the Democratic Party's campaign of patriotic consensus, a way to project Donald Trump as a far-right reactionary cult leader. It may seem like the Democrats are playing offense. That certainly fits a sports cliche, but it gets the underlying political dynamic backwards. The reclamation of patriotic symbology, of which football is a part, is pulling the Democratic Party to the right. And as he points out, this rightward shift could ultimately repel young left-wing voters more interested in policy changes than who wins the football wars. Young people care about racism, the economy, climate change, Palestine, and a host of other issues given short shrift at the convention. Football not only won't be able to be enough to satisfy them, its embrace may send a signal that the Big Tent isn't big enough for them. Not the Big Ten, the Big Tent isn't big enough for them. This championing of conservative symbols, like football, in other words, could cost Harris and Walz the election. And if it does, it will be their own doing. Who's laughing now? Maybe all the analysis and paralysis that's already gone on since Election Day. What did the Democrats do wrong? What did the Republicans do right? What's the odd brew that ultimately led to the results being as one-sided as they were? Maybe I need to apologize to Dave Zirin because no one's talking about what he predicted. What did the young people numbers indicate? They went heavily for Trump.
Especially the football-loving 20 to 29-year-old males.
But maybe in this case, they really weren't football-loving. Maybe they were appalled that the phonies on the left suddenly pretended they loved the violent game of football and said, you're all a bunch of frauds. You're not paying attention to the more important issues. I'm going, as a protest vote, I don't even like Trump, but as a protest vote, I'm going to the other side. I think we have to review it. We have to reconsider my original mocking of the Dave Zirin position that football, which is, dominates everything else.
It's America.
Did not end up playing a key role in this dramatic series of results that took place on Tuesday night, even into today.
Did we have any exit polling on that? It would have been good. That would have been a good exit poll question.
That'd be a very good question.
Did the lean into Coach Walz impact or sway your vote in any way?
Yeah, because they have a million exit
They have them
questions.
for everything. They have them for everything.
Do they have this one? Did the Coach Walz thing turn you off? As a card-carrying Democrat who's always been a little bit squeamish about, marrying yourself too much to the violent game of football, did this late effort by the Dems to milk this issue, ultimately did it end up working against your willingness to vote for Harris Walz?
It was the moment they brought out the old Scarlets from however many years ago in their jerseys at the convention. Where was the convention? Milwaukee? I can't remember. Or Chicago.
Which one? The Democrats?
Democrats was Chicago, right?
Yeah, Republicans was Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, that's right.
Yeah.
When they brought the former players out in their jerseys, the red and white, the Scarlets, that was the moment when people said, we're not doing this. That moment.
I'm just wondering.
There. It's possible.
I just feel now like I dismissed.
Yeah, we both did. I followed right along with you.
As well. Almost to the point where I felt bad. And now I guess I'm going to have to reconsider that.
I'll say this, it didn't work.
He might be, for all I know, he's written another column patting himself in the bags. I told you so. Everybody else is saying I told you so. Whether they actually said I told you so or not, they're saying I told you so.
We can at least say we don't know if it hurt. We know it didn't help.
Yeah.
We know it did not have the intended consequence that they were hoping for.
No, that's for sure.
We don't know if it hurt them or not, but we know that it didn't help
Clearly
them,
didn't
obviously.
help them. Yeah, that's for sure. I wonder how all the ex-players feel about it. Because then they got basically used through this whole process.
Well, and I'm sure they're being teased down there back home.
How'd that work out?
The county that Harris, Harrison Walz didn't even win that county down there. Blue Earth County, I think it is. They didn't win. They didn't even carry Walz's home county.
How about that? Think about it.
So I'm sure it's a little awkward if there's any Thursday or Friday night lights playoff games tonight. I'm sure it's a little awkward for the old players that jumped up there.
320 guy asks, would you like some salt with your crow? Does crow taste better with a little bit of salt?
I think everything tastes better with a little bit of salt.
Not good for you, but it does taste
that's
better.
why salt is dangerous.
You are correct.
Fan of two men in a junk truck want to give you a shot to put a grand in your hand. It is our national cash contest, and the keyword is money. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword money. Tune into Wild Wednesday each week. It's your chance to win tickets to see your Minnesota Wild in an upcoming game. Wild Wednesday is presented by Jim Beam, crowd pleaser since 1795.
No contemplation.
So it's going to be quite a night of toy department right here on the Fan. We've got your Minnesota Timberwolves back in action in the Windy City tonight on the flagship. Chicago Bulls, the opponent, correct?
Yes.
We did not talk about it, I don't think, but the Wolves did have their first kind of laugher
against Charlotte,
dominating Charlotte, and defensively they did a very nice job on which ball plays for Charlotte.
That's LaMelo, right?
I think that's LaMelo
Yeah.
Ball. Well, I love him as a player. I always have.
Yep.
He's had difficulty staying healthy, and let's face it, he's not had a lot of people around him. Damn good player, and he's been scoring at a ridiculous rate. And we sent a couple different defenders at him, including Ant, and he had a terrible shooting night. And we pretty much dominated the game. We're in this mode now. The recurring theme story seems to be we got to find our footing. We got to, get to know each other better. And I think the next time we talk to Mike Conley, one of the things we have to get into in more detail. I thought about bringing it up the last time, but I wanted it as a storyline to breathe a little bit. I hate overreacting to just a few games, but Conley has very openly and publicly said, look, part of my adjustment is they don't need me to do as much, or they're not asking me to do as much. Almost to the point where he's becoming more of a off-ball shooter, which I'm not sure is the best that he has to offer at this point in his career. But the reality is they got a lot of other playmakers out there, right, who can handle the ball.
They do. And
can run some things. So that's a good challenge for Finchie to navigate. Those issues. I haven't even been paying attention to the Bulls start. I think the Bulls are probably still the Bulls.
They're 3-5. Levine's not
Sounds
playing.
like the Bulls. Okay.
The other Ball, Lonzo, is also out, I believe. He's got an injury. Lonzo Ball plays for the Bulls.
He's been out for years, and then he came back, and then now he's out again?
Yes, according to what I just saw on ESPN.
All right.
And this is the stretch. We talked about the opening of the season where they had 4 or 5 games against really good teams, or at least playoff caliber teams, the Lakers, the Kings, Dallas, and Denver.
Right.
They're not on the schedule for a minute now, right? You had Charlotte on Monday.
Yeah.
This is a good time to break out of it. There's a million teams right now that are 4-4, 3-5, 5-3. Phoenix got off to a hot start. There's Golden State is off to a hot start. This is where I think you start breaking away from the pack a little bit and giving yourself some breathing room. When you think about Chicago, Portland, you got Miami at home, a couple more with Portland, then Sacramento, which is tough, and Phoenix. But there's this week would be one. It'd be nice to rattle off a 3-4 game winning streak here, and not go win one, lose one.
Well, part of the other, I think, unfortunate challenge right now is it sounds as if to get the rhythm of the main players and get people in sync, we're actually shortening our rotation. And that, of course, is contrary to getting a decent look at some of the added depth and some of the young players. Maybe, okay, we'll plug in Dilly for 5 minutes in the second quarter when the game is still to be won or lost. Let's give him 3.5 minutes here. Let's see what happens. Less chance, it appears to me, to do that while you're trying to figure out, well, our main guys, I don't feel like they're in sync yet. And I find that maybe it's what Finchie's got to do. I think it's disappointing, though, because I worry the longer we go, the less likely it is that we're going to see any of those guys. And I think I'd like to see at least some of them. Maybe that's not realistic. We do know that this is a deep team, a deeper team than it's been before. That's basically the Towns deal is a 2-for-1 deal. That's what has to be remembered. I still believe, now I know there are people now, it's amazing how this happens too. Cat's here, and the people who love him. Now he's gone, and he's more limited than you thought, and Randall's better. I'm sorry, I like Randall, and I approved, how I felt about the deal.
Yep.
But I like the deal because you got 2 rotation players, 2 starters. DiVincenzo is not a starter, but I think could be. You got 2 starters for one. So I still believe Towns is the best player in this group.
By the way,
now the Knicks are off to a bad start.
Yeah, he had 34 and 15 last night. If anybody's
now
wondering.
they're not winning much,
Yeah,
so you could say, well, maybe it's not working out, and it's not just about the big box score, whatever. I just hate when that game starts because now Randall's our guy, so he's got to be better. He's better in some ways. He's different in some ways, but he also can't do some of the things that we're taking for granted, I would say, from Karl Anthony Towns. And I've not been, hesitant about criticizing him from time to time. But where was I going? I wish, like I said, when we're evaluating it, it's always going to be, the beauty of the deal is you got 2 starters potentially. And if if Dante's not going to be a starter, which on this team he's not likely to, then you've added to a bench that now literally with the first two players you have to come off your bench has to be as good a top 7 as you can have. I really believe.
Yeah.
Not the same thing as saying they have the best starting 5, but it's not a game of just 5. I was hoping to see occasionally a little bit more situationally.
Yeah, and you might this week.
That's true.
If they handle their business and they handle it maturely, if they compete, Finchie was bitter with how it went down in San Antonio Davey, basically saying we just didn't try.
Yes, which I loved. Because he didn't play the schedule loss nonsense. He refused to.
There should be no schedule loss in the first week of the season. There really should be none.
None, period. But
certainly not in the first week.
But the point he made was, and this is an essential one, he said, look, if you want to go down, we can talk about the schedule stuff, but he said, being tired had nothing to do with our lack of commitment defensively, even early in that game. That's his point. There's some things you might say, I don't love it, but yeah, the game went into double overtime and we kind of ran out of gas. His point was the stuff that we could have controlled, we didn't, and that's not a good reason that we couldn't if your interior defense stinks in the first quarter of a game before anybody's had a chance to get tired.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't think I mind as much as you that we haven't seen the rookies yet, just because I think the guys that we're talking about, if this team is going somewhere, they're the ones that have to get going, and you have to figure all that stuff out.
Yes.
And so if the rooks are catching some strays and they're not getting as much run or as much clock, I think there's going to be times to do all of that. And who knows, maybe there's an injury soon where they're going to have to be force-fed in there, and I'll be regretting it. But you got to figure out, the rotation guys have to be able to play together, and you need to do that as quickly as possible because, as we've seen, we knew it going in, the West is going to be ridiculous, I think, all season long, and you don't want to lose much ground.
No, you got to win games. That's true. I think there's still ways to be creative with it, again, depending on matchups and so forth. But he's definitely decided. He's already gone away from the number of players he said he vowed to use at the start of the season. The texter guy, this is 6763. I know you joke about Coach Walls, but I think they should have leaned into it more. He should have gone on the Rogan podcast and other quote-unquote bro shows to reach the younger to middle-aged males. I don't disagree with that at all.
That's undeniable, honestly.
Both of them.
It was a mistake.
Yeah, it's a huge mistake. Now, is that the difference? No. I don't think there's going to be any one thing, but it's in the mix. It absolutely is in the mix. A couple people are saying Gladiator 1 is not a remake of Spartacus. I'm well aware of that. I wasn't saying, you're being way too literal with me.
The idea.
The genre of that sort of film, I guess is what I'm saying. I just think Spartacus was a lot better, and it's worth the rental if you have the.
Would you say that to Russell Crowe's face?
Well, I'd say it to Kirk Douglas's face. Well, I don't think he's alive anymore.
No, I think he's passed.
I find Kirk Douglas, if you're asking me who would be more intimidating face-to-face, I would say in his prime Kirk Douglas more than Russell. Although Russell Crowe, I know he's got a dark side, or did.
Yeah.
He's kind of in a different mode now, though, isn't he not?
I haven't heard much about him. What's he?
Well, just in terms of the roles that he takes, and somewhere you go, really? Oh, okay. All right. I mean, who am I to judge?
Questioning his career choices.
Well, I'm not sure he's worried about my. I'm sure he's fine, but it's just sort of taken a different turn from what might be the glory days. But I guess that you could say that's true for pretty much all of us along the way. Where else were we? Vance is soft. He served in Iraq. No balls walls. Not Tampon Tim. No balls walls.
Just right on time.
So many good nicknames. It's just
the driveways are full of them.
It's just unbelievable. Skipped out when they told him he had to serve in Afghanistan. Delusional. Again. Yeah. I love the. By the way, I was quoting the piece. I'm not here to offer an opinion on Vance's rigidity or softness. It really is. That whole game is so tired and stupid and silly for me. Who's more of a man? Not sure who's more of a man.
It's important though.
The part of the article that was wrong is that football was the cause. What it was right about was the Democrats running to the right. So that's what's interesting. You've got some lefties. You've got some Jets who are saying the mistake was catering to too much of the left. That's what cost Harris. And you got others saying, no, she catered too much to moving to the center towards the right. And that's the beauty of the postmortem. And part of what we all have to, I think, safeguard against, including me, is the very human trait of, well, there's certain issues that have bugged me about the party. So it's better for me to believe what? That the things that have bugged me historically about the party are directly responsible for them losing to the degree they did. Right? And that can be convenient because it seems to embolden your own argument, but it also doesn't necessarily always add up. And again, then you go back to the best way to do this, I think, is to meld that with the polls. What the exit polls indicate tended to dictate the direction that a lot of people who did not vote Democratic, who might have previously, the reasons that they gave. And again, economy seems to be number one, and even that's fraught because obviously in many ways the economy is incredibly healthy. We know the stock market is, but what we also know in a lot of places where Trump gained a lot of votes and Harris lost a lot of votes was where? Places where no matter how good the economy was, the average rube, the average blue-collar rube's finances did not keep up, right? Whatever, good the economy was, no matter how vibrant it was, they still found themselves, relatively speaking, underwater, right? They didn't see, well, where's my payoff?
For sure.
And that seemed to be, and that's the old, it's the economy stupid no matter who's in power, right? And that's the advantage of being the party out of power when this becomes the subject, right? And that was part of the challenge for Harris that anybody who replaced Biden was going to have to deal with was how do you separate yourself, given in this case in particular, you've been the vice president of the United States. Dr. Dan's Inbox coming up. Russo Radio at 5 o'clock. And a reminder, we hope to add Sean Salisbury, Thursday regular, to tomorrow's program. He ran into some scheduling issues today. We hope to include him on the Friday Football Beast.
Time now for the Vikings Report on The Fan, presented by Miller Lite. Vikings safety Cam Bynum joins Barrero next after this from Miller Lite.
And he walked right.
Russo Radio will join at the top of the 5 o'clock hour of a truncated program. We're out early for Vikings programming, followed by your Minnesota Timberwolves in Chicago, and then your Minnesota Wild in San Jose.
What a night.
California. All of it on the flagship. Who knew that could work together so well? FM 100.3, The Fan. Right now, though, this could be a volatile week to open the inbox, but we ain't afraid.
It's time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
Oh, we get letters. We get your letters every day.
Every Thursday, right around 4:30, you can still get in. JG at KFAN.com.
Oh.
We've got 10, 15 minutes.
Sure.
So if you've got something in the drafts that you've been saving, go ahead and hit send. JG at KFAN.com. Dear Dr. Dan, we heard you commemorating the calendar calamity anniversary of Dee Falvey's announcement a year ago. An announcement that, yes, the Twins might be tightening up the payroll. And while we knew it might disappoint a few fans, we had much bigger aspirations in mind. Because as it turns out, we weren't just focused on baseball. We were gearing up for a whole different kind of competition. The 2024 presidential election. Now, Dr. Dan, as proud Minnesota donors, we wanted to help set records in 2024, and we did. We proudly contributed big dollars to the Harris Walls campaign, and those efforts helped lead to historic fundraising numbers. After all, anyone can put money into a bullpen, but not everyone can play a hand in shaping the nation's future. Looking back, we feel vindicated now for not spending money on the M-Twins. We all know that high spending doesn't automatically mean wins. Just ask the Harrison Walls team. Wow. So here's to putting dollars where we believe they count and showing that in politics, as in baseball, strategy means more than cash alone. Respectively, Jay Polad.
Well, here's where I'm not following. Is it not fair to say that the financial strategies in both places failed Because contributing to Harris Walls didn't get the job done, correct?
It didn't.
And
They lost.
slashing $30 million off the Twins' payroll, how'd that work out?
Not well. They lost.
Not well, and again, that wasn't the only reason. So I would say, to me, if I read between the lines of that letter, that's Jay Polite admitting in baseball parlance they're 0 for 2. Now,
Not a good year.
Maybe they can say, well, we voted our consciences and we gave money to who we thought deserved to. Or do they, there's a lot of people in politics, we've talked about this before over the years, that they end up, a lot of companies that contribute equally to both sides.
Yeah.
The old, we cover our ass just because we don't know who's going to win, and we want to have a seat at the table regardless of that. That would seem to be like, trying to have it both ways, doesn't it? Isn't it?
But when you're rich,
What's
you
the
can
difference?
have it both ways. You can have it any which way that you would want.
It's time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
We get your letters every day.
Dear Dr. Dan, it appears I have flown too close to the sun. I recently consulted with former cornerback X Rhodes, who taught me that if I ever have a bad play, I should just pretend I've got some sort of leg injury. Well, after missing 2 field goals this past weekend, I decided to take his advice, but oh, what a tangled web we weave. I find myself on injured reserve. Please, Dr. Dan, how can I crawl out of this hole? Sincerely, W. Reichard.
Yeah. That's quite an allegation right there.
I did see it pop up a lot on Sunday.
The old,
He missed a field goal, and then Melissa
quad.
Stark or whoever said he's dealing with an injury, and X Rhodes made an appearance in the mentions. He caught some strays, as the kids would say.
Well, that may be unfair to him, but I understand the thinking. It's that old bit of, because in at least one of the kicks, as he's following through, it looks like he's wincing. Now, Dr. Dan is not here suggesting he was acting, but that's in the world, especially as it pertains to kickers. We're very suspicious. We don't trust any of them, right? Even one who looks like he's 12 years old and starred at the University of Alabama. We tend to think they're all kind of, a little bit fishy, as in, are they really football players? And beyond that, are they going to milk injury in a way that others at other positions would not be allowed to? Although Rhodes was at a pure football position, right? Corner.
He was.
By the way, speaking of that, this is timely. Who's the Bears receiver who got caught leaving the field on a play?
I don't remember. His name.
God, I can see him. He's number 2 for the Bears. Now, do you hear what he's saying? He's saying that he did not walk off the field in disgust. He's saying that his leg, either his ankle or his knee, tightened up on him. He was kind of semi-hurt on the play. And once he realized the play was on the other side of the field, he basically then just sort of dragged himself off because he felt like at that point he was not going to be any good to anybody.
DJ Moore.
Now, does he mean it? Or is this another example of conveniently after the fact taking hits and not wanting to own up to whatever disgust you might have, continuing to be a member of the dysfunctional Chicago Bears?
It's like when S. Diggs missed practice because he was sick. He had
I remember
sniffles.
that, yeah.
I remember it well.
General soreness.
For Dr. Dan's Inbox.
Still my favorite, general soreness.
Oh, we get letters. We get your letters every
Dear
day.
Dr. Dan, Orlando, Milwaukee, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, New Orleans, and Dallas. What does this long list of cities have in common? The long resume of my hypocritical coach. He has the nerve to bench me for my lack of attention to detail, my compete level, and my mishaps on defense. Was he ever known for his shutdown defense? I don't think so. Was he a cold-blooded shooter? Yes, but so am I. Well, sometimes, kind of. Every once in a while I am. He had a lot of options to pick where he wanted to coach, and granted, more than likely picked L.A. because of L. James and A. Davis. But he had to know that this team is a big 3. I know the rumors about me, what you see is what you get, and some say I can't guard a chair, but did you see how well I did guard my chair once I got back to the bench last night, Dr. Dan? You want to see a real slouch on defense? Tune in tonight, right here on The Fan, when Z. Levine attempts to guard A. Edwards. Oh, wait, he's out? So while Jay Reddick says I'm, quote, reverting back to bad habits, he should know that I'm actually still loading. D. Russell.
I wonder I wonder if your own ongoing affection, which I describe as mysterious at best, perplexing, with this particular player, would have been completely different if he had not scored like 30 points in a half at Williams Arena. If he had not had that kind of transcendent performance,
Yeah.
do you think it's likely, a lot less likely, that you would be as fascinated with him as you have tended to stay over the years?
No, but yeah, I think that's possible. However, Dan, there's still the playing game.
Oh, yeah.
There's always the playing game against the Clippers.
And the dead-ass fans. You got aroused when he made
They're
that
still
comment.
doing it.
Yeah.
They're quiet-ass fans. Quote them accurately, please.
Yeah, quiet-ass. That's right.
Quiet-ass
Sorry.
fans.
My bad.
Quiet-ass fans.
Quiet-ass. Very different.
The Williams Arena half was pretty incredible. Mostly just because I still,
He
to
didn't do
this...
much in the second half.
It was, okay, R. Patino. That was always Richard's, hey,
Yeah.
we shut him down after halftime. Well, he literally had 30 in the first half. To me, it's more about the playing game, and he got us in. And he kept us... Wasn't Cat hurt that year, too?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. But no,
I
but I always say I like him more than most. I understand who he is. I understand you can't really win with him, but he can get you through. He can kind of get you through stretches of a long regular season. And in our case, the playing game where we got the Pat Bev scorers tables moment.
He, sadly for me, represents the worst of athletic talent. He really does, because the fact that he is as talented as he is makes it all the more inexcusable that he has somewhere along the line convinced himself that he's not the problem, that it's how he's used is the problem. It's a lack of respect for what he can do is a problem. And doesn't matter, he's one of those guys who, it doesn't matter how many different individuals, coaches, general managers, come to the same conclusion about him deep down. And that is, yeah, we'll play him because we got to play somebody and he can give us some stuff, but we can't possibly trust him. And we're kind of waiting to see what we can, how we can find somebody to replace him. And that at some point, you'd like to think there'd be like a self-realization moment where he says, maybe it is me, or maybe it's a little bit more me than I've wanted to admit. But he's one of those guys who's, because he's soft-spoken, he's very effective, I think, at talking himself out of, owning up to any responsibility for the exasperating nature of his inconsistent approach and his willingness from time to time to, let's just be honest, mail it in.
Did you happen to catch? It was sent to me. I don't know if it was sent to you. The J.J. Redick quote on why you benched him?
No.
You want me to play it quick?
Yeah.
I'll pull it up here.
Why not? I'd like to hear it.
Again, just level of compete, attention to detail. Some of the things I've talked with him about for a couple of weeks, and at times he's been really good with that stuff, and other times, it's just reverting back to certain habits. But it wasn't like a punishment. It just felt like for us to have a chance to win this game, that was the route we wanted to take.
Very good answer.
Yeah,
it's direct, but he's not
savage.
Obliterating the player. He's
I'm sure he wants to.
He's saying out loud what, as I said, so many others have said, and I think that personality. There's got to be a name for that personality mindset that he represents. That always finds a way out of holding himself responsible for it.
Yeah.
Victim? I don't know what it would be, but and a lot of it, I'm guessing, generally has to do with the people you have around you, who say, man, they don't know how good you can be or how good you are. They don't appreciate you. Man, you should... what's the problem? Yeah, like other people don't, mail it in for a couple of defensive possessions. I mean, you're no different than anybody else. Why do they pick on you that way, D'Lo?
That half at the barn, though.
Yeah. How many years ago was that? 20?
It was 30? A long time ago. It's a really long time
I don't even
ago.
think Ohio State won the game. I don't even remember. Did they win the game?
I'm pretty sure they did. By the way, thank you, Adam Patterson, for tweeting that J.J. Redick
Nicely
clip.
done.
My guy, J.J.
It's a good one.
Redick.
It's time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
Oh, we get letters. We get your letters every day.
Dear Dr. Dan, I'm reaching out to share some news that you probably have already heard. Turns out, my high school football assistant coaching experience didn't quite prepare me for the big leagues. Yes, somehow, They chose to not go with a guy whose best campaign asset may be well-rehearsed Minnesota nice and a deep appreciation for fair food on a stick and flannel shirts. Now, I thought I had a solid shot, but as it turns out, I may have fumbled the ball somewhere along the line, probably while trying to wave at too many people all at once. Of course, Trump must have run a pick six on us somewhere in there. He slipped through like he had some extra blockers on the blind side. Guess I'll have to brush up on my defensive playbook next time. Just want to know, is it too soon to start the Klobuchar Walls chants? I'll start working on how to run a pick six of my own in case I get the call again. Do you think AOC will jump on Xbox Live with me again this weekend? I've got some extra free time now before I come back to Minnesota. Regards, Coach T. Walls.
Do you know what's sad about, because we've all probably seen these spliced together, what do they call them, videos showing the occasionally sort of manic way that Plaid Dad would come down after being introduced and greet a crowd and so forth.
Jim Gaffigan nailed it on SNL.
100%.
Just nailed
very,
it.
very true, Davey. And again, this is not a compliment to the discourse, the political discourse in 2024. There are people out there who would have apparently felt better about Plaid Dad if he would have simulated oral sex with a microphone the way Donald J. Trump did. I'm being serious. There you go. That's fun. Now that's a funny. What a man's not these wimpy little claps he has, right? That's where we are, boys and girls, in 2024.
Let's do a couple walk-offs here.
Okay.
We have some short ones before Russo Radio joins. This is a really deep one. You really have to listen to the fan to get this one. Dear Dr. Dan, I feel like this is all my fault. I should have recognized the head trauma and amount of concussions back in the day. I feel my lack of empathy to players is now subjecting the great iHeartRadio listeners to the Dudes on Dudes podcast every Thursday. Apologies, B. Belichick. Have you heard those promos?
No.
Is it Gronk and can't remember who the other one is with Gronk. We run it like every hour. The Dudes on Dudes podcast every Thursday.
I've not heard Belly on that.
Oh, yeah. It's not Belly. It's Gronk.
But it's them.
He's
okay.
apologizing.
He's apologizing.
For lack of knowledge. Dear Dr. Dan, I thought I was your favorite, not G. Soreness. That from B-leg weakness. B-leg weakness.
We do. I mean, you could say that those might be the two best in the history of injury cliches that we invented, right?
We got them here.
General soreness and bilateral leg weakness. Those are both. No one can take that away from us. That in the history of injuries, sports injuries, we have the two most bizarre that had never been heard of before we invented them here. Correct?
We have.
That's pretty good.
Nobody knew. Dear Dimwit Dan, low IQ Dimwit Dan, or what did Mace call you yesterday?
Despicable Dan.
Despicable Dan.
Yeah. Danny. Despicable Danny.
You don't think I know football? I owned the New Jersey Generals, the greatest football team ever to play for only 3 seasons because the league failed. D. Trump.
Well played. Very well played. Speaking of B. Belichick, I completely forgot to at least mention something that I'm assuming a lot of other people did. You did see the still shots on Halloween.
I did. What was the costume again?
Well, B. Belichick was in kind of like a fisherman's costume with he had a
That's
rod.
Right. Yeah.
And
he did. Sorry. Come on.
In his hands.
Yeah, we know. You didn't need to finish
And then there's the fishing rod.
And then there was the pole.
There was, that's no better.
Yeah.
And he seems to be reeling in a mermaid who is the comely young lady that he apparently continues to court. And in all seriousness, is there any more unlikely scenario that one could associate with B. Belichick ever? I'm serious.
No.
Ever. You couldn't make that up. None of us are creative enough to say there's going to come a time when the guy believed by many to be, he's definitely one of the best coaches of all time, maybe the most successful coach of all time, is going to pose willingly for a Halloween photo of him in fisherman's garb, reeling in his girlfriend mate in the mermaid costume. You cannot make that up.
As a former football coach at the University of Minnesota once told me, women are undefeated.
That was another
Women.
term for that, but yes.
Yes, and that was the other term that he gave me.
I'm sure he did.
But women are undefeated. Lastly, dear Dr. Dan, Spartacus, are you nuts? R. Crow.
Ooh, yeah. Well, you're right. I probably wouldn't want to get on it. I don't know that I'd have the guts to say it to his face, and that probably makes me a fraud. But he may feel the same way, because Spartacus was an extremely fine film. And it was K. Douglas in his... You want to talk about manly?
Yeah.
Macho? Well-oiled prime?
Well-oiled.
Oh, God, yes. You kidding me? All of the soldiers back then. I mean, all the warriors. What's the term I'm looking for back in the day? Gladiators.
Yeah.
They were oiled up. There's no question about that. At least the Hollywood versions. No top 5 at 5 today because we got Russo Radio.
Gronk and Edelman, dudes on dudes.
That's what it is, yeah. San Jose, California. We'll check in on Russo. Is he worried about the club after our one-game losing streak? Stay tuned. I have heard the dude on dude ads. I thought you asked if I'd actually heard the podcast. Yes, I have heard the ads. It would, I think, be okay if I hadn't, but there are actually people disturbed. Like, well, how could you, do you never listen to the KFAN? It's like, yes, okay. It doesn't really tell me all that much, but it's not the same for me as having listened. The podcast might be great, but to clear the air so people can sleep tonight, I have heard the promos. All right. Is that out of the, we got that out of the way?
For today, you're going to have to keep, people might have turned off.
Well, the moral of this story is actually, we now have further evidence of why I had an easier time staying on track yesterday than I have today.
The text line?
That's an inside joke. Russo Radio, Dateline San Jose, California. Welcome back to the program. What is the weather like in San Jose today?
Absolutely perfect. Just absolutely ridiculous, actually. 72 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, not any wind. It's just amazing. I just actually walked back to the hotel.
Give me, these are, I think, two different questions. Give me your favorite hockey city to visit. Give me your favorite hockey arena to visit.
Favorite hockey city to visit is definitely Montreal. It depends on like how you want to define it. Like I love going to Vancouver, but if you want to talk about pure hockey city, I mean Montreal is pretty amazing. In terms of arena, I mean I have a soft spot for Madison Square Garden. Just love the arena. It's every time you walk in there, you feel like you're in a place that has seen history over the years, from incredible concerts to the circus, which I used to go to a lot as a kid growing up in New York, and obviously just an incredible atmosphere for a hockey game. Went to a bunch of Knicks games when I was a kid as well. So I just love going to New York in general, but definitely Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, hard to argue, I think, with either of those choices. So it's interesting because it sounds like I didn't get to watch. I think our last game was election night, pretty sure. And so I ended up watching a lot of that coverage, not so much of the game. It sounded like we had a pretty lousy performance across the board. So how are we looking at this? Are we looking like, okay, is this the beginning of some little disturbing trend? Because it's obviously been very promising to this point. Or is it we write this off as just a really, bad game in which we didn't do a lot of things very well?
Yeah, let's put it this way. If it's a disturbing trend in the start of something, then it's really, really disturbing, because the next 3 games, and then I think their first home game is against Montreal. These are highly beatable teams if you're as good as you think the Wild are. San Jose is playing very good hockey right now. They've won 4 of their last 5 games. They have a really a ton of talent on their team. From the 2 young kids in Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini, to really quality young guys, 2 guys that actually sat down with in Prague in August in Zetterlund and Eklund, and then veterans like Mikhail Granlund and Luukkonen and Nico Sturm and Tyler Toffoli. Alex Wenberg plays for them. Ferraro. I mean, they got a really quality roster actually, but you got to beat these teams if you are a team that thinks they're as good as the Wild are. So, to me, the other night was pretty highly predictable. I think sometimes when you're winning games, at the end of winning games, you can start to tell that the team isn't playing well, even if you pull out those victories. And I wasn't overly impressed with the way that they played against either Tampa Bay or Toronto, but they pulled out the wins in spite of their terrible special teams in both those games. And, but then LA comes to town. It's the second of a back-to-back. In the first period, they played well. It looked to me like the Kings left their hands and their legs in Nashville. But I didn't feel like the Wild offensively executed particularly well. And that's been a trend that has been coming into their game for a long time now. And so now it's get back on track in a building that they usually play hard against. They are hard games every time the Wild play the Sharks, but the Wild usually, are able to come out with the victory, and usually it's big nights from guys like Zuccarello and Kaprizov that really get it done. So then you go to Anaheim. It's a second of a back-to-back, but again, a team that you should very much win. Then you cross the world and go to Chicago, and you're playing it against the Blackhawks team that's won once at home and is a team that the Wild have had incredible success with the last several years. So this should be, if the LA game was going to be the beginning of something, this should be the tonic to cure all those ills.
Let me ask you also, I'm coming at you with a lot of sort of unrelated questions that all kind of interest me, and I'll get to a couple texts from the audience as well via the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line 64686. In basketball, there's always an ongoing discussion about minutes. Mm-hmm. And, how much do you play your main players, your regular players? Now, it's apples and oranges because the sports are set up very, very differently, and there's a built-in need, obviously, to make more changes, line changes, in just in the basis of the speed at which the game is played. But within that, are there significant differences between coaches when it comes to, for example, how much a given team or a given coach might play, let's say, his so-called top line? How does that work?
Yeah, a lot of it will depend on matchups and things like that. But I could tell you the one thing about John Hines is he likes to load up the ice time with his top guys, especially on a team right now that hasn't shown yet that it has a lot of scoring depth. So right now, Kirill Kaprizov, last I looked, was leading the league in ice time for forwards.
There you go. Okay.
And he is somebody. McKinnon might have been there and Rantanen, but last I looked, Kaprizov was right around them. He had a game in St. Louis where he played 27 minutes and 59 seconds. He's had several other games where he's 24. Usually the way that John does it is it's schedule related. So like in Chicago, where the Wild are going to have a couple days off right after, you can almost bet your bottom dollar that guys like Brock Faber and Kaprizov and Boldy are going to just play just gigantic minutes that night. So if you're a Prize Picks or underdog person, I'd load up the minutes that night. On the front end of a back-to-back where you're playing in Anaheim, the goal tonight is to even out the ice time.
Right.
And then same thing in Anaheim, after 2 days off, to then sleep overnight in California because of the curfew at Orange County Airport, and then have to, fly to Chicago and play an earlier than normal game in Chicago. You almost bet that he really wants to even out the ice time in both these games. So it always is going to be schedule related. So with Kaprizov especially, when you know that the Wild, and they've had a lot of this in the first half of the season, in the first month of the season, where they have 2 or 3 off nights in between games, you just know that he is just going to give Kaprizov his 25 minutes. What I love about Hines and what he's doing with Kaprizov right now is he's also not just married to whatever line he's on.
Yeah.
If there's not a lot of special teams in a game, all of a sudden you'll see him getting double shifted on the fourth line. If there's offensive zone starts late in the period, next thing you know, Kaprizov's out there getting double shifted, and he'll sit a guy like Trennan or even Lauko at times. So he's trying to, especially sort of give Kaprizov, the ability to go out there and perform beyond just playing even strength with Marco Rossi and Matt Zuccarello.
I love that. How unusual is it in the league? Is that what a lot of coaches do, or not so much?
Well, definitely in Colorado where they have no depth, Ranton and McKinnon are just playing a ton. Here it's definitely more than I've seen. Like, usually, Miko would get over 20 minutes consistently, but this is heavy minutes that Kaprizov has been playing. He came into camp in incredible shape. He seems to have an unbelievable engine at times. There have been times where he's shown fatigue on the ice. Those are usually after long shifts, and he definitely likes to drag out his shifts, especially on the power play. But this is very different than even John Hines last year. It almost feels to be a concerted effort this year to really, make sure that Kaprizov is on the ice because he is their best player and their driver.
Text guy, a Dry Heat guy, he's a longtime hockey guy, checking in, wanting to know, to get your opinion regarding the NCAA allowing CHL major junior players to play and how it will affect Minnesota high school hockey, the NAHL and the USHL.
Well, I will say I'm not completely versed on this. My biggest curiosity is how this will play out is if all of a sudden we do see a bunch of Canadian Hockey League players flocking down to the States, how that affects college hockey, because I already feel with the portal that guys are getting squeezed out that might not be the top players. And unless there's going to be an expansion of college hockey, which I hope there is, because, if you look at the number of NCAA programs, Division I programs around comparatively to say football, we're talking 4 or 5 dozen NCAA Division I teams, and I think there's definitely room for more and more and more. And so if all of a sudden these teams are getting loaded up, and you have not only the portal that's allowing players to transfer in, but then you have Canadian Hockey League players coming, I think it's going to be a significant problem if you are a lower tier college hockey player, a third and fourth liner that's not going to be, that's going actually to college to get an education and don't have, aspirations of maybe playing in the NHL. In terms of junior hockey, and again, I'm not completely versed, but I do start to wonder if because of this, there's going to be less and less true freshmen in college hockey, and if that then suddenly would allow players to, more players going to USHL, NHL, and things like that. So, we'll see how it all plays out. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch. This was definitely something that we started here even as early as a couple of years ago, that this was trending this way. And I think, obviously, starting next August, it's going to be, we'll see if it's a mass exodus of Canadian Hockey League players coming to get their college education here in the States.
So if the Wild continue to get the, productive goaltending they've largely gotten from their top two, does that mean ultimately the idea of this 3-goalie experiment is going to be eliminated, go away? Or, the longer we go, how is this going to be navigated if the top two continue to be the top two?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, to me, this is a non-issue until Jesper Wallstedt gets his game in order. Again, he gives up 5 goals on 21 shots today. I know it's a 10:30 a.m. game, and I've actually talked to him about those. He hates those kids' game, and I can't imagine being an AHL goaltender and hopping out of bed and having to suit up for a game without, a morning skate or things like that. I mean, that's, he seems to not perform well on those. And
why is it so early?
It was a kids' night. They do these kids' games all the time in the AHL. Right. Usually I'll actually throw on Flow Hockey and watch a little bit of it, but it's usually on mute because it's unbelievably loud of kids just screaming and things like that. So it's a fun thing that they always do in the AHL, and I actually wish I think it'd be cool to do in the NHL at times. But anyway, I just might have to take the night off those games or the morning off. But, he's got to play better for him to get back up here because the idea is to win. And that's the one thing that Bill Guerin has been consistent on early all offseason is that, they had definitely a plan that I think that they were going to have 3 goalies up here. At times he was definitely going to go to the Iowa based on, schedule and based on cap space and things like that. But I don't think that Bill has been inconsistent with the message that whichever goaltender was allowing them to win games would be the guy that would be able to go. What's been good is that both Fleury and Gustafsson have won games. So until that changes, I just don't, and Wallstedt becomes elite, I just don't see them coming back with the 3-goalie thing. Now, that doesn't mean later in the year when the schedule starts to, get busy and maybe Wallstedt's game starts to, improve and maybe Gustafson and Fleury's games start to crack, that we're not going to see Wallstedt again. I think the goal here is still to get him games this year, but not in the expense of winning games. And right now, the Wild have gotten off to a really quality start. And as long as Gustafson and Fleury continue to rack up 2 points a night, on most nights, I think that this is going to be, the plan, at least as of now.
Sharks are terrible.
They've won 4 of their last 5 games. They have been, they've given up, I think, the 5th most goals in the NHL, but lately they're defending really well, or actually I shouldn't say that because they gave up 50-something shots to Columbus the other night, but Vanacek made 50 saves in that game, and they won in overtime, I think, a 2-1 game. And so they're getting pretty good goaltending. They've won 4 of their last 5, so this is not a situation where the Wild can just go in here and just take them lightly and just expect that this is just going to be an easy 2 points. They, as I mentioned earlier, you look at their roster, and between the Celebrinis and the Smiths that are really teenagers, so we'll have to see how good they are tonight, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them. This is only going to be Celebrini, who's the first overall pick in this past draft. This will only be his 3rd NHL game tonight because he was hurt. But then you got really quality young guys in Eklund and Zetterlund, and then a bunch of veterans from Granlund to Toffoli to Luukkonen and Nico Sturm, who Wild fans are very familiar with. They're a team that's got quality talent on their roster, and so you just can't expect that you're going to just come in here and cakewalk tonight. So I think the Wild need to make sure that they are putting the LA game behind them and figuring out a way to rebound. The best way to do that is to be much, much better on the special teams. That's an area that's been a real problem on the power play, really the last 4 or 5 games, and the penalty kill all year long. And that's the biggest concern that I have right now with this team, is that, it was supposed to be a big thing that was going to be fixed this season. And so far they're just absolutely atrocious on the penalty kill, have given up goals 6 times on their last 11 kills, 5 games in a row. Yeah. They've killed off, I think 62.5% of opposing power plays. That's brutal. And so this stuff has to be fixed. And whether it's structure as John Hines says it's not, or individual mistakes, which John Hines says it is, those individual mistakes need to be fixed, or there needs to be better individuals. And right now, you look at especially the blue liners. Bizarrely, Brodin and Faber have been bleeding goals every time they're out there. They've been on the ice for 6 of the 9 goals this year. So they've got to figure out a way to fix this.
Thanks. Have fun tonight, and we will chat with you next week.
Yep, anytime, Dan.
Thanks, see you. Sir. That's Russo Radio joining us from San Jose, California. You can hear Wild Sharks tonight on the Fan. Also on the Fan, your favorite basketball team, the Minnesota Timberwolves, taking on the Chicago Bulls in the Windy City, 1800 West Madison Street, Chicago Stadium.
It's a great barn.
Unbelievable.
Fan and 2 men and a junk truck. I want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our national cash contest. Final keyword of the evening is deposit. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword deposit. Prep Bowl is more than just a game. It's a celebration of Minnesota high school football. Don't miss the action, excitement, and drama on November 22nd and 23rd. You can catch it all live on 45 TV or download the KSTP app on your streaming device, or catch the action in person by heading over to our contest page, registering for your chance to win 2 tickets to the games. All of it at KFAN.com, keyword contest. Final segment of the show wrap, brought to you as always by American Pressure, commercial grade pressure washer since 1975.
It's the bumper to bumper show wrap.
Vikings podcast and tailgate will follow us, then Wolves in Chicago against the Bulls, Wild at Sharks. Also, all of these items on FM 100.3 The Fan. Tomorrow is going to be a very busy Friday football beast. It will include Ben Gessling, Picks with Gerby, Lavelle E. Neal III, and confirmed on Sean Salzberg?
Believe so.
Hoping.
He said
Tentative.
Friday should be good.
Tentative. So we will hope for the best. It has happened before. In fact, I think last time it was after a Thursday night game. So we could actually, he could review what the Vikings did, but we'll still take him today or tomorrow to preview. Vikings over Jacksonville. We got any final or further resolution on the long-haired quarterback, whether he's going to start?
On Lawrence, I'm pretty sure I heard today, let me check, that he's not going to play. I thought I saw that today, but let me do a little bit more due diligence on that. Yeah, I should have been more prepared for that question.
Yeah, he's not been great, obviously. I have to believe Jacksonville would prefer to start him, but maybe the former Patriot comes in and is hungry a little bit. What's his name?
Mac Jones. And
throws a different wrinkle at us. Do we have to prepare for both quarterbacks? Is that complicated and challenging for B-Flow? Probably not, because neither one of them has been particularly distinguished.
I did hear this earlier. Ian Rappaport was the one that said Lawrence is unlikely
to play.
Unlikely to play.
And then their season's over. So there's the added question of whether they're ready to mail it in. So it's one of those games where you throw them off the edge of the cliff early, right? Because otherwise they go, well, maybe we don't have to stay on the cliff. Maybe we can actually get back in this thing and steal something. So you'd like this game, do you say, don't play with your food, go out and try to take care of business. It's certainly a game that the Vikings should win.
Did you see the Doug Peterson bulletin board material for Sam Darnold?
No.
At least I'm taking it that way. I'm slighted by it. Somebody asked Peterson, who I already don't like, right? He's the Eagles coach. They beat us. Philly sucks. Mm-hmm. Nick Foles, statue, the whole bit. Somebody asked him, I think today, maybe yesterday, essentially, what's the difference you see in Sam Darnold? How is Sam Darnold unlocked? What he's unlocked this year. And Peterson's response was Justin Jefferson.
Whoa. Is that right? I missed that.
Now, he may have elaborated. I didn't see the whole quote. I just saw the headline and him say that.
That could be meant more as a compliment to JJ than necessarily a rip.
I'm taking it as a rip.
Of S. Darnold.
If I'm S. Darnold, I throw it to Addison and Hawkinson for like 3 straight quarters.
Does this seem a bit harsh to you? This is from 320 Guy. I have a calendar. So far, you've worked 7 full shows since July 8th, 2022. Keep up the great work. That seems a bit harsh.
I don't think it's accurate.
And I think it might be a bit of a, embellishment.
Appreciate his diligence, though.
Apparently offended that we're going to be out at about 5:40 today. So
we don't make the schedule or the calendar.
Have nothing to do with the schedule.
We just show up for work.
Yeah, that's what we
do.
That's what we try to do. A number of people are saying unlikely to play, and revenge game for our left tackle, right?
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
PA said that the Jags the team is devastated.
Yeah, I heard that.
By Cam Robinson not being there.
Are they really?
Maybe he's a good clubhouse guy.
He might be. I guess it's possible. I don't think he was flourishing. Now, as we said, maybe this is the perfect time for him to get a second lease on life, be with a more relevant franchise, all those sorts of good things, and you'll take that, and you'll take anything you can get that is better than just let next man up here. We've all celebrated, I think, or have said the move was a positive move by the Vikings, is the kind of aggressiveness that you want to see in your football team. But so by that logic, that'll be another reason for them not to play hard. They'll be almost rooting for the guy who they didn't feel should be rejected.
It's just that their dauber's down.
Okay.
Might be hard to summon up the strength to go up against.
Are they professionals?
They're professionals, but they're also humans, Dan.
Oh, I see.
They're human beings.
I guess I had no idea that he was quite the glue in Jacksonville. It doesn't seem to have done them a lot of good, but that's okay.
Yeah, how would we know? I think that might be the answer.
Part of the issue for sure. I mentioned earlier that the Wolves are sort of, at this point, it appears. Oh, by the way, Vikings Jacksonville. What is the latest line? I assume if Trevor Lawrence is out, even though he hasn't been a great quarterback, well, maybe not. Maybe it's not going to be. It's going to be a distinction without a difference if he doesn't play. And maybe Vegas is in that mode now where they're not sure, so we don't even know what their final line is going to be.
Yep. The line right now is Vikings 7-point favorites.
7, yeah.
Is that higher than what we talked about? Was it 5
I think it's
earlier in the
up.
week?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
That's about, I think, what it should be, quite frankly.
I agree.
And that doesn't mean you're going to win, obviously. We know how the way this league is set up, but
I had to crush Blake more today.
what did he do?
I had to text him. Well, I'm trying to get ready for the show tomorrow because I'm off. I'm going to Rutgers, right?
Yes.
So I'm trying to get everything organized. So I'm going through the picks, and he was with you guys last week because I was in Champaign, and I'm going through the picks, and I go 1-2. You know, my record's pretty good this year. I'm 18-9 now after last week's 1-2, and I'm looking at it, and he has me taking the Broncos to cover. They got crushed.
Who are they playing?
The Ravens.
Oh, you're talking about the game last
week.
Yes.
And the line like this, it's my fault because I always tell him
to do it.
You can do it. Thankfully, he did go with what I would have done, the Vikings over the Colts, which was the only game I got right. But of course,
I think that's the only game I got wrong, right?
It is. Yes, you were 2-1, and the Lions and Packers. There's not a chance in hell I was taking the Packers to cover a 2.5-point spread. The Lions were always going to win that game by at least a field goal. And we know it was by much, much more. And so I'm bitter that he's opened the door. I still have a nice lead over you and a big one over Gerby. But he opened the door.
Well, you have your own. I mean, I have no sympathy for you. You can make your own picks.
I can, yeah.
I mean, maybe you think you're being selfless and giving the kid a chance to spread his wings.
And pick the games and things like that.
He can still sell it even if they're your picks, if he's doing it right.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I do make my own picks, and perhaps tomorrow I will. He countered with I know there's a 3-0 in there somewhere that he had, which might be true. But it's just the Broncos, well, they're not going to cover 9.5, and Gerby and you got that one. The Broncos suck.
Well, the 9.5, because I remember we did talk about it a lot. It's a big number, you know, where you say, and Denver's defense had been legit to this point. I think they're kind of frauds, so that's why I took. You know, I said, no, I'm going to take Baltimore. And as you say, they ended up,
41-10.
They pretty much dominated that whole ball game. But you get into close to 10 points.
I know.
Against a team with a legitimate record, whether it's made of paper or not. And I think we saw perhaps to a certain extent Denver got exposed in that game. What's the Thursday night game? Is it on any of our sister stations?
It's on the Plus.
It is on the Plus tonight.
Bengals-Ravens.
Bengals-Ravens. And there are a lot of people who still believe that the Ravens are the best threat to unseat Kansas City. And I get that because I like a lot of things about their team, but that's going to probably fall under the classification for me of I'll believe it when I see it, right?
Sure.
Mahomes is going to, for me to predict or expect Mahomes to get beaten, I have to see it almost at this point, don't I? And,
yes, in the playoffs?
Yeah, in the playoffs for sure. And even with Lamar, as good as he's been, I say, well, I got to see it in the playoffs from him too, don't I?
Yes, sir. Yes, you do.
It's just the way it's got to work.
They're different with Henry now, obviously. They've got a different way to win, too.
It's a good move. I mean, I don't know how big he is right now, but he looks faster than I've ever seen him.
I know.
I mean, honestly, he's
a problem.
He's a blur. He is a I'd like to have him.
Yeah.
I know nobody wants great running backs anymore, and it doesn't matter. And
we got your guy, Jonesy.
Jonesy's fine.
A. Jones. Ravens 6-point favorites on DraftKings tonight, in case anybody's wondering.
So that'll be on the Plus, you said.
Correct.
So what if the Wolves game goes into OT?
Then Fallness has to sit there.
Is that how it works?
We'd probably flip it if we needed to the Plus.
We got plenty of stations.
Or Cool 108.
That's the beauty of it, right? We can move. That's the beauty of being Chet Abbott. I mean, you can move all these chess pieces, not checkers pieces, chess pieces around, right?
And at 9:00 on a Thursday night, that's what Abbott wants to do.
That's what he would believe in, right?
For the listeners,
For
yes.
sure. So that's why we're out early today, much to the chagrin of a couple of texters. I appreciate all those contributions to the inbox, not to mention the day after political conversation, which we got back to, including our done as item. Somebody else had sent me a story that on Election Day that ran locally, there's a debate about whether high schools or public schools should be open on that day. I, for the life of me, don't get it. Now, the only reason to hesitate would be if there's voting going on in those schools that's creating some, major disruption, then maybe that makes sense. But otherwise, yes, go to school. Go to school. Yes. And by the way, this was before they knew they were going to be traumatized, right? If you're going to go with that angle, well, at least wait for the trauma to take place. And then, but even that to me is rather kind of on the silly side. And I got a lot of texts from people who said they had their kids went to the University of Minnesota, and sure enough, They got the day off, man. It's such a sad message to convey. Doesn't negate your thoughts and your views. You don't have to be happy at all with this result. I'm not. But guess what? We still came to work. Now, we got out early.
Yeah.
But that has nothing to do with...
Would we have worked a full show today?
Well, that's...
Or yesterday. We got out at 6 yesterday, too.
I'm not admitting to. That the reason I can talk tough on this is because we knew we were not going to have full show.
We saw the finish line. We knew we just had to get through 3 hours, and today, 2:45.
Thanks for the inbox. Like I said, that's podcastable. And Russo Radio, joining us from San Jose, California. A lot of football conversation tomorrow and a lot of sports coming up. First Vikings, then Wolves, then Wild, all tonight on The Fan. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
The stories a stadium could tell.